and welcome to episode 16 of the Cedar Arrows podcast. My name is Rebecca, and I'm coming to you from a small homestead in Alabama where I live with my husband and our 6 children. In addition to being homesteaders, we are a military family, we homeschool, and I am kind of an obsessive knitter. So this podcast is primarily about my knitting adventures and what I've been making lately, but sometimes you will also hear snippets of those other things on this podcast. I hope that you will find something here you enjoy. If you do, feel free to like and subscribe, which will just help me to reach other viewers who also enjoy hearing about the craziness that is my life. You can also find me elsewhere on the internet as on Instagram and Ravelry as happyhomemaker05. So today is Saturday morning, November 30th. We just had Thanksgiving here in the States this week, and now my family is transitioning into getting ready for Christmas, so we are very excited about that. We had a lovely Thanksgiving on Thursday. My family, my husband and I host, and we have most of our marriage. It just kind of fell that way years ago, and it's a thing we've continued ever since. And I absolutely love it. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday, and I love baking and cooking and hosting and just everything about it. So that was a lovely day. We had about 20 people here, and it was just so nice. The weather is cooling off. It was nice and chilly. My husband had a bonfire going outside while we waited for the turkey to finish frying, and we had, all of our favorite traditional holiday comfort foods that we don't eat very frequently, but that we all love. We had several family members and also some friends that we've kind of chosen as family who spent the day with us, and it was just a very nice, peaceful, relaxing day. Not only is Thanksgiving Day one of my favorite things, we also have a tradition of hosting an open house for our entire church family the night before Thanksgiving. We always meet on Wednesday nights for midweek Bible study, and the Wednesday before Thanksgiving is always a singing night where we focus on giving thanks and the things we have to be thankful for. And the year that our first son was born, my husband got off work a little bit early, and the house was all cleaned and prepped for company to come the next day. And my husband said, "Hey, why don't we have some people over from church?" And I said, "Okay." So we ran to the store and bought some paper plates and cups and some refreshments, snack stuff, and just announced it at church that night that anybody who wanted to come over was welcome. And we were amazed at how many people did. We had a huge turnout that night, and we had people that stayed till pretty late, and people pulled out guitars and we sang, and just had such a good visit. And so we decided that the next year we would plan ahead and do more of the baking ourselves and host another open house. And now 16 years later, we're still doing it. At the time, we lived less than a mile from our church building, and so it was very convenient. Several years ago, we moved out to the country out to begin our homestead, and now it is a lot more of a commitment to drive all the way out to our house. But it was such a well-established, I think 10 years, we'd been doing it 10 years at that point, such a well-established thing that people still don't mind the drive, and they will come and just spend a couple of hours with us in the evening before Thanksgiving. My husband calls it the stomach stretcher, Thanksgiving warm-up. And so that has been a favorite thing of ours for all of our children's lives, really. When they were small, I used to send them off to my in-laws' house. My mother-in-law would take care of them for Tuesday evening through until Wednesday evening, and I would do all of the baking myself on Wednesday. And looking back now, I don't know how I did it all. We lay a pretty hefty spread because we want to make sure that no matter how many people come, we have plenty. But now I have a bunch of teenagers who help. And so at the beginning of the week, we'll make our list of all the things we want to make, and then everybody kind of signs up for the things they want to be in charge of. So we spread it out over a couple of days, and this year it was so relaxed. It was not stressful or rushed. We just got everything done, but I had a lot of helping hands. And so now I look back and I wonder how in the world I did all of it by myself in one day. But it's a thing we look forward to all year. We love having a full house, bursting at the seams with guests. Some come and just stay a few minutes, and some come and stay a few hours. But even though it's a longer drive than it used to be, we still have usually between 40 and 50 people that come. So that is a lot of fun. Like I said, lots of baking going on all week long to get ready for that and Thursday. And it's just a wonderful time of fellowship and family, and I am so thankful we're able to do that every year. So Thanksgiving is full of tradition for us, and then we go right into getting ready for Christmas. Usually we go the day after Thanksgiving and we cut down a tree. This year we're kind of transitioning. Our older two children are starting jobs, and so yesterday our oldest had the opportunity to work for a few hours and be paid a good bit extra. So we decided to get our tree today on Saturday instead of yesterday. But my youngest son, who is always chomping at the bit for the next thing, got up in the attic and brought down all the Christmas decorations yesterday, even though we weren't doing the tree. So we've started putting some things out, and we'll go get the tree this afternoon. Today is the Iron Bowl game day, so if you are a football fan, if you live in the South, you know what that means. There is a big football game happening this afternoon, and we don't have whatever cable or streaming channel to see. You can tell I don't follow it very closely myself. Whatever we would need to have to be able to watch the game on TV, we don't have it. So my children and my husband are big football fans, and they would be watching. Go ahead. Come on. Sit down. So my husband and children are big football fans, and they would be watching today if we had the capability, but we don't. So we are going to be getting the tree while the game is happening, so maybe the crowds will be smaller. We'll see. Typically, if I go out during game time, the streets are pretty empty. Hush. I made the mistake of leaving Della outside the room. She usually has to sit in here with me, or she barks outside the door, so my daughter just let her in, and hopefully she'll settle here in a minute. So today, like I said, we'll go get our tree, and we always have fresh baked chocolate chip cookies warm from the oven while we trim the tree, and we of course listen to Christmas music. The first album I always turn on is the Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton Christmas album that we listened to when I was growing up. My parents had an old record player, and they had the old vinyl record of that album, and my brother and I played it, almost wore holes in it. We played it so much. So that is still probably my favorite album to listen to, and I have gotten all of my children hooked on it as well. So that's what's going on with us this week. Last week my husband was in Turkey for a work trip. The timing of it actually landed very nicely because he was able to come home and have several days off of work for the holiday to adjust back to being on our time. It's a long way to travel for just a few days. Once you get adjusted to the time there, you have to come back and adjust back again. But he brought us some Turkish delight, which is one of my favorite things and not a thing I can get my hands on very well. So that was a real treat. And he had a very interesting trip, and got the work done that he needed to do, and has a new country stamp in his passport, and I got Turkish delight out of the deal. All right, well, I guess that's all for now that I wanted to catch you up on. So before I start talking knitting, I guess I will show you what I'm wearing. This is the Kindred Spirits cowl. It was designed by Makenzie Alvarez, and I knit it in Knit Picks Gloss in the Pine colorway. This is one of my favorite yarns from Knit Picks. It is so smooth and has such a nice sheen to it, and the Pine colorway specifically is just one of my favorites. I have knit at least 3 pieces for myself in this. I've also knit baby sweaters and things as gifts. It's just my favorite color. So if I were to knit this again, if you've been here a while, you know this is a common refrain. If I were to knit this again, I would probably knit it in go up 1 needle size. I don't remember what needles I did use, but I will have my Ravelry page linked in the description box. But anyway, my gauge it tends to be small, and sometimes I can block out the swatch to the right measurements. And then sometimes I get impatient and don't want to knit a bigger swatch, and so I just go with it. And then really sometimes the drape would be better if I would go up 1 more needle size. So I would honestly prefer this if it was a little more drapey, because I live in the South and I don't usually want something right up close to my neck because it's warm here more than not, but I do really enjoy wearing it. I think it's beautiful. I love this honeycomb stitch pattern. I don't currently have bees, but I have kept bees in the past, and I love bees, and so this honeycomb pattern is one of my favorite designs, favorite motifs to knit. So anyway, I highly recommend this. It is a lovely, quick DK weight. DK? Yeah, I think so. Quick pattern to knit up, and it's so squishy and feels so nice. So I pretty much just wear this in the winter, and this is the first time I've pulled it out for this season, and I'm just really enjoying it. All right, so let's talk knitting. I guess I will start with my finished objects. I have 3 finished objects today. First of all, I don't think I showed these at all. Last time I recorded 2 weeks ago, I mentioned that I had 3 bags sitting next to me with yarn and needles ready to cast on some projects, and I didn't even show them because it was just yarn and needles. But 2 of those are now finished objects this week, so that feels pretty good. So first off, I have these mittens. These are the Nalu mittens put out by Quince and Co. And the yarn is Quince and Co. Chickadee in the Malbec colorway. I think they're so neat. I love this. This is just such a simple design to knit, but I think it looks so pretty. And the pattern photo, like the sample photo, is in blue and it looks like a river. It doesn't as much strike me as a river in the red colorway, but I think it's so interesting, and it was so much fun to knit, and they were so quick. So these will be a gift, and I'm so happy with how they turned out. And I say this every time. I don't have lights. I am using overhead lights and window light, and I never really can tell until I'm looking back at the video if this is showing well. So I keep holding it up, hoping that if it didn't show well last time, it will this time. But anyway, I'm very pleased with these. This was a free pattern, which is actually why I picked it out, because I thought I wanted to try a pattern I hadn't done before, but I was also trying to keep my gifting kind of low budget. And I found this pattern that was designed for this yarn, and it was free, and so I thought, well, it's not really a gamble at all. If I don't like it, I'll rip it out. But it was very well written and so much fun to knit, so I will probably make it again, but I think it makes for a really nice gift this time. And I don't remember how much yarn I used, but it was less than a 50-gram skein for the pair. It's one of the things I love about mittens. So anyway, as usual, my Ravelry pages will be linked in the description box below. So if you have any questions about that project, hopefully it is answered there. But yeah, that just took me a few days, and I love the way it turned out. My next finished object is this cowl, I still have ends to weave in. But this is the Earthshine cowl that you've seen a couple of times now. I finished this a few days ago and I blocked it before I finished weaving in the ends. And so I haven't finished that part yet, but I think it turned out so nicely. And it's got such a lovely drape. I'm really, really happy that I chose this for the make-along that I was participating in. I need to take finished object pictures. The make-along ends today, and I need to post some finished object pictures of it. But I'm so happy with how it turned out. I'm so happy that I have knit up this yarn finally that was sitting in my stash for so long. So if you didn't see my last couple of episodes, I guess I should mention that I was participating in a cowl, a make-along called Friends That Craft Together Make-Along, hosted by Emily of Salt City Knits and Kelly of Lay Family Yarns. And the point of it was to pull out a skein or a couple of skeins that you had been kind of hoarding, hanging on to, that were, you know, too precious to want to knit with. I think we all do that. We kind of hoard the things that are really our favorites and we're afraid to knit the wrong thing, or we're waiting for just the right thing. So the point was to pull out those special skeins and knit something with them over, I think it was the course of 2 months was the length of the make-along. So I've had these skeins in my stash for years, and I dyed them myself, and I was so proud of how they turned out, and the yarn itself is just delightful. It's squishy and it's got cashmere in it, and I was so proud of how the colors came out. But then I knit them into something that I didn't love, and eventually I ripped that out, and I was still just afraid, like, what am I going to knit with it? I wanted just the right thing, you know? So they sat there in my stash for literally years, and finally this make-along kind of spurred me on to choose a pattern and knit it, and I'm so happy I did. It's so soft and it's so squishy, and I'm going to love wearing it. So I don't know, I've talked about this a lot, and I'm not sure what all I have said and haven't said, and I don't really think there's anything else I need to say. I probably should tell you who designed the pattern. This pattern was designed by Hilary Smith Callis, and I think I said it, but I'll say it again. It is called the Earthshine cowl. It is knit in DK weight yarn. It took most of 2 skeins, and I think I weighed it, and I don't remember how much it weighed. So that'll be in my Ravelry page. But most of 2 DK weight skeins. And it was just so nice to knit. I love her cowls because they are so easy to follow. There's a lot of relatively mindless knitting with little bits here and there to keep you from getting lost in a sea of stockinette, unless that's what you want to do. So they're just always very, very easy and pleasant to follow, pleasant to knit, and they make such beautiful finished pieces. So I have several of her patterns, and I have never been disappointed. I think that's everything about the cowl, so I'll show you my last finished object for this week. This is another baby hat knit in the light as a feather colorway, light as a feather pattern, designed by Katie Herrod of Songbird Handmade. I showed you an identical, well, same pattern, different yarn. I showed you the same hat last time I recorded. I have 2 friends having babies very, very soon. This one will be delivered this week, this coming week, and I am just so happy with how it turned out. This yarn is from October House Fiber Arts. I don't think she's dyeing yarn anymore. She does a lot of cross stitch patterns, and she has just a beautiful shop, beautiful Instagram page. I don't think she is going to be dyeing yarn anymore, but I loved her yarn. She was one of my favorite shops. She dyed the softest, most beautiful colors. So I participated in like a mystery club for, I think, a summer a few years ago. It was just 2 or 3 different boxes. And this was one of the mystery skeins. This is called Rose Garden. And it came with a mini, I think it was a sock set, if I remember correctly. It came with a mini skein that was a light green that really complemented these speckles. And I knit a pair of socks with it. And so I had enough left for a baby hat, and I think it just turned out so sweet. So again, this is the light as a feather hat pattern. I knit the smallest size, and it only takes 27 or 28 grams of yarn for the baby size. And I knit this one on size 5 needles. I have also knitted on size 6, but I like the gauge. I like the look of the fabric a little bit better on the 5s. It's just a beautiful pattern. It's very rhythmic, very easy to read where you are, very easy pattern to follow. Highly recommend that one. So that's all my finished objects for this week. I have a few whips to share, and then as I warned last time, I will probably have several whips that I don't share over the next few weeks because I loved gift knitting, and that's what I'm really in the midst of right now. So my first whip is in this cute little basket because I love baskets. I'm working on the Owl Island coaster or mug rug pattern. This is from Anne of Little Skein in the Big Wool. Several years ago, I did a mystery club with her that was a children's literature club. So I think it was 6 months, maybe a year of mini skeins and notions and small patterns that were inspired by children's literature. So this one is based on The Tale of Squirrel Nutkin. If you know me, you know that I love Beatrix Potter. So that was the thing that really caught my eye, was when I knew that she was going to be doing a Beatrix Potter colorway 1 month. So I've had this pattern for years and I've never knit it, but I'm working on a package for a friend and decided that, you know, everybody needs a mug rug for their coffee or their tea. So right now it's just kind of the beginning. I'm ready to begin the smocking section, which will be, you know, the border. I mean, it's a pretty thick. It'll kind of double the size of this before I get to the actual end of the pattern, but it's so satisfying. I don't know if I've ever done the pinhole cast on before, and that was fiddly and not overly fun, but because you're increasing so quickly, the really fiddly rows are just, you know, are pretty short. So I keep laying it out to make sure it will lay flat because, you know, it's folded and bunched when it's on the needles. But I like how it's looking, and I'm excited to do the smocking portion of the pattern. So that's just kind of a sitting around in the evenings here and there. It's not gotten a lot of attention yet, but I am enjoying it, and I think it will make a nice finished project. And I didn't tell you, this yarn is, it's a Knit Picks Hawthorne tonal colorway called Hood River, I think. Let me double check. Yeah, it's called Hood River, and this is just leftover from another project from years ago, but I think it will make a lovely coaster. So that's one of my whips that's gotten a little bit of attention this week. I worked on that while we had dessert on Thanksgiving, but I got to the point where I needed to do the smocking and put it aside for something mindless, and haven't really picked it back up yet. My next whip is a pair of socks for my husband. I'm working on them in tandem. And this one is, I think, maybe 1 row away from being ready for the heel, and so I'm trying to catch this one up right now. This yarn is Patons Kroy, what is it? Patons Kroy FX. The colorway is called Cascade Colors, and it's a kind of a color shifting colorway, so it's very gradually changing, and I'm knitting this from 2 separate skeins, and it was just the color change is so subtle that I couldn't figure out. It was going to be a lot of work to figure out how to start them both in the same place and make them exactly match, which matters a lot more to me than it does to him. So I just didn't worry about it. And so this one's just kind of starting to get into the blue that this one started with. I think it's so pretty. And honestly, when I picked these skeins up several months ago, it looked a lot more green, but knit together it looks a lot more blue to me. So I'm wondering if I will get into more green. There are little flecks of green in here, but I'm kind of interested to see how these are going to knit up. So I started these on DPNs, but we went to see Wicked at the beginning of the week, and I moved them to 9-inch circulars so I could knit in during the movie. We go to the movies very, very rarely, and I have not done a lot of theater knitting or knitting in the dark when I really couldn't see it. So it was kind of a challenge to myself. And the easiest way to do that is the 9-inch circulars. And I knit over 2.5 inches, I think, during the movie. That was the most success I've ever had knitting in the dark. And I only had one mistake I had to go back and fix. And this is a very splitty yarn, so I was pretty proud of myself. You know, not being able to look at it, it's not nearly as distracting. It just kind of keeps my hands busy. I would be more distracted if I couldn't do anything, if I was just sitting there in the dark than sitting there knitting. And I was sitting at the end of the aisle, end of the row, and my husband was next to me, so he's used to my knitting that it doesn't distract him, and I didn't have to worry about distracting anybody else nearby, so it was really nice. And in the last 15 or 20 minutes of the movie, I just put the sock down because the suspense and everything, I really wanted to focus. So I was really pleased with how that went. And then, so that's why one of the legs of the sock, one sock is so much further along than the other, because that's the one I knit on in the theater. And now I'm catching the other one up, but haven't had a lot of knitting time this week because of all the Thanksgiving prep. So this is my purse project now, and I don't really have a deadline for it, and he's seen them, so it's just an easy thing to pick up and work on as I can. So I have, of course, gotten my Christmas bags out now. I love that this one is really wintry, but not specifically Christmas. I mean, it's got a tree, but it's not decorated or anything. So this is my favorite wintertime bag. I made this several years ago, and it's just so cozy. I just love it. So that's my main thing that I'm working on right now. I have a couple of projects that I really want to get started in the next couple of days. And I always kind of alternate between having several that I rotate through, and then I have times where I just really need one or two because multiple projects having multiple projects on the go is stressing me out. So it just kind of varies. But right now now that Thanksgiving is behind me, I'm feeling more capable to have several things juggling around on the needles. So I have a couple of other gift things I want to get started sooner than later so they can be put in the mail well before Christmas. And I'm just want to knit all the things right now. So that's really the only current whips I have. But as I mentioned, I think I mentioned at the beginning that I was sitting here knitting on a swatch. And so this is a gauge swatch for the Advent project I decided on. So sitting right here next to me is my Advent calendar from Heidi and Lana, and I am so excited to start opening those tomorrow and start the project. So I wanted to go ahead and do my gauge swatch today to figure out which needles to get ready and just be ready to dive in tomorrow. So I decided on the Radvent wrap by Ambah O'Brien. I have admired that one several times over the years, and I am so excited to work on it. So it's a much looser gauge than I typically knit, and so I'm working on figuring out needle size right now, and so excited to get into all of the Advent knitting and hopefully a good bit of cozy quiet time this month. I always kind of envision the winter being relaxing. You know, I think of the Ingalls family from the Little House on the Prairie books, and how they couldn't do as much outside work during the winter, and so the winter was their time for snuggling down and staying warm and staying in. And they had Pa would play his fiddle in the evenings, and Ma was always rocking in her chair and knitting. There was just less for them to do because their work was very seasonal. So I always kind of envision that for our winters, and then it doesn't really turn out that way. Because we have heaters and cars and electric lights and things like that, we stay busy all year. But I do always want to kind of turn inward and hibernate a little bit in the winter. So I carve out as much of that quiet, cozy knitting time as I can, and it's never quite enough, but it is what it is. It's all good things, usually, that we're filling our time with, so I can't complain too much. Well, this episode has been rather disjointed with lots of interruptions from children and dogs, and we'll see how much of that I can edit out. I feel like it's been a little bit of a shorter episode. I don't really know how long it will actually pan out to be once I finish editing, but we do have plans for this afternoon to go get the tree, so I need to move on and get some things done around here. But I am very glad that I got to sit down and chat with you all for a little while and catch up a little bit, and I will hope to be back again in 2 weeks. Until then, I hope you are having so much fun with your making and your holidays, and I hope you are warm and cozy, and I hope you're doing well. Talk to you soon. Bye.